Thanks so much for having me. I am really looking forward to this because I am sure, Shannon told me there were 50 people who signed up for this. And every time I talk to someone and I talk about, well, I want to be a peacemaker, I almost always get the response, well, what does that look like? You know, I'm making all these friends in these Facebook groups, or I'm always watching what's going on Twitter. They're not even on social media, but because they watch TV, you know, somebody will share something that somebody tweeted out or something that happened on social media. And it feels so frustrating to have an ethic of peace and want to be a peacemaker, want to enter into this space, but not know how to do it well. And so today we're really going to look at, like, what does it mean for us to be social media peacemakers? I'm going to start sharing my PowerPoint with you guys. But before we, let's see, I'm going to see if it'll let me start playing it. Okay. Before we do that, I want to go over a few kind of housekeeping. The first thing I want to say before I start sharing, before we go through the slideshow, is we're not going to go in depth into specific social media platforms. So you're not going to hear a lot from me about, you know, we're going to tackle Facebook, and I'm not going to go into the history of Twitter, and I'm not going to go into specific things like that. If you have a specific question about a certain social media platform that you want me to go over, then I'm going to take my share off for a minute. If you want me to do that, then we can do that during our question and answer time. The next thing, the reason is because I really want us to focus on building sort of our ethos. Like, so what is our posture? What is our goal when we join social media? When we jump on social media, what is the posture that God would want us to have? And so the next thing that I want to point out, or I want to highlight, is if you have a specific Q&A, like a specific instance, like I have this friend who is always posting these kind of things, or I have this concern, or I really want to know, like, what do I do when my church members are, you know, having a conversation in our Facebook group about a certain, you know, certain issue. Sorry, I had to go get my charger. If you have that specific question, then I would encourage you to save that for the Q&A, because I really love getting into the nitty gritty and really answering those specific questions, like how to respond, what's the best way to respond. And then the last thing I want to point out is that there's 3 goals that I have for this, and I'm going to highlight that for you later on. There's 3 goals I have. The first one is for that posture piece. The next one is to help you figure out how you are going to engage with social media. So, like, what is your own posture for social media? And then if we have time, I'm going to give you some tips specifically for how you can build your social media platform in a way that encourages peacemaking. So let me go ahead and share with you what's on my screen. Okie doke. And let's start slideshow view. Here we go. Okay. I'm going to hide my self view. Okay, so I really love the name of this webinar, #MakePeace, Social Media Shalom, because what I really want us to focus on as we're thinking about building our practices of peacemaking on social media is that we are thinking about it in terms of peacemaking and not peacekeeping. So in my book, Shalom Sisters, I have this distinction between what does peacemaking look like and what is peacemakers. What does it mean to be a peacemaker? And what does it mean when Jesus says, blessed are the peacemakers? And then what is peacekeeping? And are those things the same thing? When I talk about peacemaking in this seminar, and when I typically talk about peacemaking overall, I am thinking about working towards that picture of shalom, that idea, that God's dream for wholeness and flourishing, working towards it as partnering with God. We're creating something new. We're making peace where there is conflict or discord or confusion. We are partnering with God. And it comes out of a place of love. It comes out of a place of deep love for God. It comes out of a place of love for that vision, that dream of shalom. And it comes out of a place of love for others. And when we do things, when we are making peace out of that, when we're doing that, when we're looking for peace and we're creating peace out of a place of love, we do things like have hard conversations or confront people. We do things like live self-sacrificially, look like Jesus on the cross. Love, it gives us the ability to kind of run towards that brokenness so that we can be a part of its wholeness, be a part of creating its wholeness. When I think of peacekeeping, it comes out of a place of anxiety. So peacekeeping is a practice of peacekeeping is avoiding conflict because you don't want to rock the boat. Or a practice of peacekeeping is continuing to serve others and work really hard and get yourself sense of worth from what you do, and not practicing self-care because you're concerned how other people are thinking about you. Scripture encourages us to be anxious for nothing. And so when I found that I am working to create peace, which both of these, being a peacemaker or looking to create peace, is a good desire. It's a good impulse. But when I think of the distinction between, am I being a peacemaker? Am I doing this thing out of a deep love for the other, love for God? Is it flowing out of that love that I'm already experiencing? Or am I doing it out of anxiety? And what I've noticed is on social media, you can tell when somebody is entering in to create something good and bring about wholeness and really partner with God. Because there's an open-handedness to it, because they just truly love the people who's involved in that conversation, and they're not clinging to their ideas, they're not clinging to the identity that they get from having those ideas. You can tell when somebody is practicing peacekeeping online, because there is this sense at the very bottom of it is that you don't agree with them, or if you push back, or if you just ignore them, they keep pressing. That's really rooted in anxiety. And so when I talk about peacemaking, I'm always going to keep bringing us back to how are we living out an ethic of love when we are entering into, when we're jumping online, when we're participating in whatever our favorite social media platform. Because I deeply believe that whatever social media platform we're on, we should enter in and we should love being on that space, and we should feel like we have a mission when we're on that space. And that's my hope for this class. So let me go to the next slide, if it'll let me. Here we go. So like I said, there are 3 goals for our time together. Hello, go to the next slide. To understand our calling to be peacemakers, and in this case, on social media platforms. Hold on one second. I have to hide everyone's. There we go. Examine the kind of posture we should have on social media as faith leaders. And then, like I said, learn to craft a social media strategy that empowers us to be peacemakers. Now, some of us might be thinking, okay, Oshita, well, I think if you're on this call, then you are interested in figuring out how to make social media work for you as a person who has an ethic of peace, as somebody who wants to be a peacemaker. But for many of us, and many of our church members, many of our parishioners, they might be thinking, oh, well, I just don't even get on social media. Or, I've shut down Facebook because it's gotten so frustrating. What I would say to that is I'm not a millennial, I'm a zennial. I'm the person who's kind of in between that phase of, I actually remember having a corded phone in my home. And I remember when the internet happened, I go way, way back to AOL and that dial-up tone. So I was somebody that kind of just, as a teenager, as a young adult, started to grapple with social media and grapple with online life. As much as we try to avoid it, as much as we say, I'm going to avoid it by not engaging with it, it's still there. Our kids are being affected by it. Our coworkers are being affected by it. People we love are being affected by it. They are building relationships with others. They're maybe being hurt online. And so it's important for us to recognize that although we can have a personal posture of I just don't engage with it, it is a huge part of how people build relationships with each other. And because God is a relational God, and because we're called to be peacemakers, then we have a unique opportunity to engage in that space that is designed for relationship building, and to infuse and to bring the be peacemakers, be agents of God's shalom. So with that, I want to reference a book that I think is really helpful for us when we think about the way social media engages, the way social media has been used. And it's Socialnomics by Eric Qualman. Eric Qualman says, we don't have a choice on whether we do social media. The question is how well we do it. So the question is, how do we as peacemakers enter into social media and use it in a way that encourages others? So when I think about my posture as somebody who is a peacemaker and uses social media, when I ask myself this question of how well do I want to do it, well, I want to do it in a way that looks like God, in a way that builds relationships, in a way that brings the love of God to every interaction. And when I think of that, I'm reminded of, I'm thinking about when Jesus encourages us to be peacemakers. He says, blessed are the peacemakers. Well, then exactly what does that mean? What is a peacemaker? A peacemaker, I think, is really shown in this definition from Lisa Sharon Harper in her amazing book on Shalom, The Very Good Gospel. She says, God created the world in a web of relationships that overflows with forceful goodness. So the very first thing I would tell you about being a social media peacemaker, well, the second thing, the first is, are you being a peacemaker? Are you entering into social media with a posture of love, that you know that you are beloved by God, and so you are ready to remind those online that they are beloved, that you're ready for that love to flow from you to them because you've received it from God. So building your social media posture on an ethic of love. Then the next thing is, okay, out of love, your goal is not to be right. Your goal is to bring forceful goodness, to bring right relationship. And I think having this picture of my goal when I jump into social media, when I go to my church's Facebook page and I notice somebody shared something that is a little political or a little controversial, or maybe they just didn't even like the music on Sunday, so they're telling everybody on the Facebook page how they didn't like the music on Sunday. Oh my gosh, you're in a moment where you have to practice social media shalom. If your goal is to not tell that person, we worked really hard on our set list, and our band was practicing an hour before, instead of you going in wanting to be right, what if you went in with the goal of forceful goodness? How can you create good in that conversation? And we're going to talk about some strategies and some things later on for that. This is really in line with something we read in Romans 14:19. So then we pursue the things which make for peace and the building up of one another. So when Shanna asked me, how did my book start? It really started with me asking God, what are the things that make for peace? What are the things that create wholeness and flourishing and goodness around my life? And how can I practice those? And in my book, I go over 12, I call them Shalom Sister manifestos. These are 12 things that I tell myself because I notice that there are just different directions in which I can be seeking peace on any given moment between myself and God, within myself, with others in my life, my interpersonal relationships, and then seeking shalom in systems of the world. Well, social media is one of these instances where all four of these we have an opportunity to kind of practice peacemaking in all four. We have to check our relationship with God, our beloved. We have to check our intentions. We have to honor the people who we are in relationship in real life. And as we're doing that, we're transforming the system of social media that has been used to hurt so many people. And then the last thing, which is really a scripture that grounds my first goal for us, that ethic of love, is John 13:34-35. It says, a new command I give you, love one another as I have loved you. So you must love one another. And by this, everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. Now, I want to tell you a story about how this this scripture became really alive for me on social media. Something happened in the news. There's been just so much. I really think it was around politics, but something happened in a private group that I was a part of, and somebody was sharing something, and she was really heartbroken about it. And then this was a group of about 5,000 people, and then some people disagreed with her, and so they jumped in and they started, disagreeing with her and sharing all the things that they found on other parts of the internet, and then some people came in and they really agreed with the first poster, and so they started posting, and I'm watching this, and one of the things that I love about being an Anabaptist is that I don't get pulled to either side. I really practice a third way, because I practice stepping back and looking at both sides and seeing the potential good in both sides, and then figuring out how to communicate that with others. And so I was watching what was going on in this thread, and so what I did as a practice of peacemaking, is I went in and I said, you know what, I can see this reason why this person posted this, and here are all the reasons why that makes a whole lot of sense to me, and I really want to validate and honor this person's response, because this thing that happened really did touch them. And then I said, but you know what, I can also see why you guys feel this way about this topic, and I can see, based on what you just shared, how it's really resonated with you. And then I said, but you know what? I feel like the goal in this conversation is to not, I said, I feel like if we, in this conversation, and we have created enemies out of each other, then we've just wasted hours and hours online and lots of typing. And we maybe are even poised to leave a group that all of us are in agreement that we love being in this group, and we've really gotten some sense of connection and purpose in being a part of this group. I said, what if instead of the goal is to try to persuade each other, the goal is to try to honor and respect each other and to see each other? And maybe if this conversation is not helpful in this thread, what if we went to another space, like a Skype call or a Zoom call or something, and we talk this through so we can hear each other? So I kind of threw that out there, and that was a strategy that I'm going to bring up a little bit later on too. But I kind of just threw that out there and said, what if we did that? Well, the women in that group, a lot of them said, oh, I'm down for that. And so something did kind of flow from that. But here's why the scripture came alive for me, that everyone will know you are my disciples if you love one another. I got a private message from somebody in that group, and she said, I'm not a Christian, but I watched how you, as a Christian in this group, and you've been very vocal about your faith, and I know you wrote this book about Jesus, and I'm not a Christian, but I watched how you handled that, and I was so impressed. And I just want to say thank you, because I've never seen anybody be that kind to somebody that they potentially disagree with. And so that is the calling. That is the unique possibilities that are sitting right out there for us when we think about being peacemakers on social media. Okay, so before I get into specific things that I can tell you as faith leaders to tell your people, or ways that you can kind of change the way that you're engaging in social media, I really want us to kind of camp out on examining the kind of posture that we have on social media as faith leaders. Because it flows out of us, right? We can't teach the thing that we're not actively doing, right? So, I can't teach my teenager to have a vibrant prayer life, or what does it look like to remember God and to remind himself that Jesus is with him, to stop and take that moment of pause, if that's not something that I'm practicing doing. It feels false, and it feels like pulling teeth, actually, because it's not something that I really know how to do. And so what I want us to do is spend some time kind of looking at our own postures around social media, examining some of our own anxieties or some of our own fears or insecurities that we might have around social media, and really allowing the Spirit to speak truth and wholeness and vision over that. Philippians 2:3 says, do nothing out of selfish ambition or empty pride, but in humility consider others more important than yourselves. So really, we're going to look at our own issues around social media, because we know that as social media peacemakers, we're doing this to create wholeness and flourishing in the relationships that we engage with online. So we have to make sure we're checking with that within ourselves first. So the first thing that I tell myself when I'm checking my posture as a social media peacemaker is that my worth is not defined by social media updates or reactions or complaints in Facebook groups. When I first started jumping on social media, I heard all the chatter from so many people about how, oh my gosh, you have to have this Pinterest perfect life, and I don't feel like I, fit in, or, I'm so insecure about what I share, or if I work really, really hard on something and then people don't respond, I wonder, was it even worth it? Okay, you and I are loved by God. We're faith leaders, so we know this. But I think it's even harder for us as faith leaders, because we know when we share something, people are listening, people are paying attention. When we work hard on something we share, we want to make sure that it has it has a reaction out in the world. We want to know how well it's taken in. And so it's very easy for us to kind of get our sense of worth or get our sense of purpose as peacemakers from others' reactions. The very first thing for me, as somebody who is building a relationship with people online to encourage them to be social media peacemakers, encourage them to be peacemakers in their everyday life, is that my worth is not defined by their response. If you are working on a social media campaign, or you are sharing something that your church or your organization is doing, and you share it, one of the things that I do quite often is I share something and then I turn off that app that I shared it on. I stay away from my phone because I was just faithful with what God asked me to do. I put the thing out there, and then I'm just going to trust that the Spirit it'll touch the people who it's supposed to touch. And then I come back in. I don't just leave it out in the world. Then I come back in after a little while and I engage with those responses. One of the things I had to do when I started using social media pretty actively, I'm mostly on Instagram and Facebook. I'm rarely on Twitter. But what I started to do was post something, step away, remind myself my worth is not defined by social media updates or reactions. This is important too, because if the Spirit if the Spirit encourages you to share something that might feel a little political, that might feel a little controversial, but you know you're being moved in the Spirit to share it, and you want to start that conversation in your group, it can be very scary, and it can be very easy for you to get your sense of worth with whether or not you find somebody to agree with you. But that is not our calling as peacemakers. Our identity is seated in our belovedness. Christ died for every single one of us. And so that what happens on social media doesn't take that away from us. And so we just have to have that initial posture, like I can share and be honest and not be defined by others' reactions on social media. And it's really hard. I just want to say it's really hard, specifically if you are leading an organization and you're trying to build, a social media platform following because you're reintroducing yourself to the community, or you're introducing a new initiative like the Gathering Place. It can be very, very hard to not look at, okay, are we getting enough likes? And use that purely as data to determine what you do next, or definition of your identity and worth. And so, yes, use the responses to determine, is this a good thing that our community needs and wants? Okay, it's not great. We'll try something new. Peacemaking allows us to be open-handed with those kinds of things. The next posture that I always have as a social media peacemaker is to remember that there is a person behind the post. So one of the things about social media that has been really helpful for a lot of people who I would identify as introverts is that it's given them a neutral, safe space to share their whole ideas. You can take as much time as you need to write a post. You can only engage with groups and people who you agree with. Social media has been really helpful in helping people come out of their skin in a safe place, because really it's just pixels and paragraphs and words and GIFs and memes. But it's not flesh and blood and voice. It's not real people that you are having to engage with. And so it's very easy to forget that there are people behind every single post. And so a posture for me that is really important, that helps me continue to have humility, that helps me to love others and to remember that there is a purpose when I share on social media, is that there is a person behind that post. So if I disagree with them, I can disagree with their ideas, but I will do it in a way that reminds them of their dignity and their worth, and reminds them that they are made in the image of God too. I would do it in a way that encourages them to engage with me as a person. So like I said in my story earlier, I noticed that the conversation wasn't going anywhere, going back and forth, sharing all these ideas, sharing links over here, and calling each other idiots, or, oh my gosh, you're so wrong. It wasn't going anywhere. It was just spiraling in that very pixelated, the very impersonal space. So having a posture that says there is a person behind the post gives me two purposes. One, to always engage with that, with any comment, reminding myself that there is a person on the other end for whom Christ died. That the moment they woke up this morning, God was delighted. The politician who shares a thing that I deeply, deeply disagree with, is beloved by God as well. That's the first kind of aim. But then the second is, how do I honor that person in this conversation? Okay, social media was great for starting the conversation. Now it's time to take it someplace else. And now we have so many mediums, like you're hearing my actual voice right now. We have so many mediums that we can use so that we can remind ourselves of the person, the voice, the flesh, the real person on the other end. And so, I'm a big fan of starting a conversation and then saying, let's kick it over to Skype. Let's have a phone conversation. Because the end goal is to make peace where there is potential conflict, and we cannot be peacemakers in an impersonal space. It has to be relational. It has to be personal. That leads me to the next thing is I want to authentically connect before I attempt to correct. So going exactly what I just said, finding a way to take it off of that impersonal space where the conversation was just started, and then take it to another space where I can actually hear that person's voice, where I can hear, oh, they're a little nervous about sharing that. Because you think that every single person, when they share everything online, you automatically give them a really bossy and super confident voice inflection. Don't act like you don't. So many of us just assume that the other person is being loud or angry or defensive. But if we actually get a chance to hear the other person and they say, well, I voted for this person because, but I really feel, you hear that hesitation in their voice. You hear that processing in that voice. That allows us to enter in with humility and compassion. It allows us to build a bridge and be peacemakers. It allows us to bring about wholeness in a space that could potentially be full of conflict and discord. One of the things that I've noticed on social media that happens a lot is this idea that we can, if we disagree with somebody, I'm going to go back. If we disagree with somebody, we automatically just cut them out of our lives. We automatically say, oh, you know what? Unfollow, unfriend. But what if we had a posture that says, I want to know this person and I want to understand where our disagreements are. And then start that conversation. And if you end up needing to unfriend or unfollow, it's not out of a place of spitefulness. This passage in Romans 12:17-18, do not repay anyone evil for evil. Carefully consider what is right in the eyes of everybody. If it's possible on your part, live at peace with everyone. That is really kind of like my basis for when I engage with somebody I disagree with. So after I try to authentically connect with them, and I move into maybe correcting them, because see, here is the thing, as kingdom people, as people who follow Jesus, and when we recognize that there is something that hurts people, that violates the Imago Dei, that is theologically incorrect or gives a picture of God that's not true, yeah, we want to engage with that. We want to correct, but we need to do it out of a place of love. We need to do it out of a place of humility. And so what happens so often is that we can use social media as a way of getting back at others. I know nobody on this call probably does that, but we may have seen other people do that. And so just holding in this idea that our goal is to live at peace with everyone as much as possible. And so we're not going to repay tit for tat. So that leads into, something that so many of us are thinking about. How do we set good boundaries with people who we disagree with? So we disagree with them. We told them on social media in a conversation, hey, we started this conversation, let's take it someplace else. Then we have a conversation with them. We realize, they're not in agreement with us. And so it's time for us to unfollow, unfriend, or block. Okay. Going back to our passage just now in Romans, it's not out of a posture of repaying evil for evil. Oh, you don't agree with me, so you don't get to be my friend online. Goodbye, unfriend. You are blocked. That's not the goal. Using unfollow, unfriend, and block can be peacemaking tools. And the way that I think about using them as peacemaking tools is I will tell the person, we've had a lot of conversations about this. I'm still in process about this idea, or I feel very passionate about this idea. And I can tell that we're just not going to be in agreement with it. and you're really in a space where you feel like you have to share these ideas that I just don't agree with. And so for a season, I just am going to not follow you so that, you can process on your own, and it doesn't build any resentment or bitterness in me, and I can process on my own. And maybe let's try to link up again on a Skype call or on a Boxer conversation and talk it through. But for right now, like, the way that you want to use social media doesn't align with the way that I'm thinking about using social media. So just to let you know, I'm going to unfollow you. Unfriend and block are kind of like the next level. And these are things where when you actually start engaging with people, because again, internet is great, but it can also be really dangerous and really hurtful. When you start engaging with people who are called trolls, who are just only there to start an argument, to demoralize people, to just start conflict, that they really thrive on that high, that thrill that they get from starting an argument. We as peacemakers, we can set boundaries with that and say, I don't need to go to Instagram and always see you posting against this idea or this person or calling this person this name. So I'm just going to unfriend or block. But they're not punishments. We're not doing it to be spiteful, but we're building it to practice peacemaking. And then the last one is regular breaks from social media are good for my soul, and I don't need to announce them on Facebook. Now, social media for me has been so great. When I spoke at Grantham Church, which is a Brethren in Christ church, a few weeks ago, and when I got there, I was in Harrisburg, and I met so many of my Mennonite and Anabaptist friends. I met with my editor, who I met online. It was I'm a part of this group called the Menno Nerds, and so I met so many Menno Nerds. It was a great trip, and it was mostly because I connected with people who I saw, online, who I interacted with usually online, and I got to see them in real life. Okay. Social media has been great for building relationships, but I also know that social media, that I need a break from it because it's unrelenting, right? I mean, you can turn your phone on. I've tried very, very hard to turn all my notifications off, but you can turn those notifications on and your phone will not stop dinging at you. It can be all consuming. And so to know that we are working in regular breaks from social media, and to let our followers, let the people in our real life know, like, hey, I'm taking a break from social media. I want to spend more time with you in my real life. When are you free? It's really good for sort of recentering us so that we can continually go back to our posture, number one, that our worth is not defined by social media updates or reactions. Now, I say you don't need to announce them on Facebook. I will leave that up to you. If you feel like you need to announce it on Facebook because you have a huge following, or like if you're consistently posting things, or if the church office is closed for a while because of this, because you guys want to get away and really separate yourself from, work on spending more time with the people in your real life. If you're going to do that, then I for sure say let your followers know. But typically this letting other people know that you're taking a Facebook break or social media break is kind of become sort of this virtue signaling thing where people can say, oh, look at me, I'm really practicing self-care because I'm stepping back, and really nobody is worried about, or nobody is affected, either way, if they're on or not. But if you are using social media consistently and you feel like you need to let your followers know that, let your community know that, then I would say do so. So let's move on to our final goal. Let me look. Yep, we still have some time. We can go over our final goal and then open it up for Q&A. So goal number 3 is learn how to craft a social media strategy that empowers us to be peacemakers. And so, Lord, make me an instrument of peace comes from St. Francis of Assisi, this beautiful prayer about how we can engage with others as peacemakers. So when I think about using social media, thinking about our strategy as social media peacemakers, I wrote about this in Leader magazine. Consider your why. Why do you want to use social media? So we considered our calling, the potential that's there for being peacemakers. We've considered our posture, who God has made us to be, and what are the ways that we want to make sure that we're engaging with social media from a place of wholeness and goodness, from a posture of looking for shalom, and being peacemakers out of an ethic of love and not anxiety. My husband is just coming in from work, so my dog is getting super excited. So sorry about that. Hebrews 10:24 asks us to let us consider how we may spur one another on towards love and good deeds. Our why as peacemakers, like I said earlier, is to create a space where where we can partner with God in creating shalom, wholeness, and goodness and flourishing. And so us as space leaders in our spaces, our goal should always be to spur others towards love and good deeds. And so when I think about this, there are kind of 3 posts that we as social media peacemakers can use to advance the work of peace on social media. The first one is one that inspires passion. So this is the one where these are the kind where we share a scripture about the picture of God that is really meaningful to us, or a line from a hymn that really grounds us. Maybe this is where we share something like a quote or a video from a recent podcast or recent sermon, or the audio from a podcast. This is a post that inspires a passion for the Lord, a passion for Christ-likeness, a passion to be peacemakers, to look at Jesus as our Prince of Peace. The next one is one that gives us purpose. So, go back to passion. Passion is also the kind of post where, we share our core values. So like my husband is a church planter. And so, a passion post for us would be posting something that's leaning into one of our core values, like reconciliation. Okay, so a post about reconciliation for my husband might be something about Black History Month, about us having a conversation as Black and white people that's unified and dignified. The next one is one that gives purpose. So this is one that invites people into the mission of our church, or the life of our church, or the mission of our organization, or the life of our organization in some way. So, hey, join us for worship this Sunday. Hey, we are having this, we're going to have Serve Sunday. We're going to have Serve Sunday, so make sure that you join us, at the homeless shelter and at the church office. Or, here's a picture of Jesus healing the Roman soldier. Jesus is a God of nonviolence. How can you practice nonviolence in your life? So these are posts that kind of give a purpose, that it's a call to action for the other people to live into Christ-likeness in some way alongside their community or alongside you. And the last one is one that invites others to play. I deeply believe, and I have one of my manifesto points in my book is, we will choose subversive joy, because I deeply believe God is a God that as a God of delight. He loves to give us moments of joy and laughter and true connection. I deeply believe that God is a playful God. I know God has a sense of humor, because I lived all over this country, and now I'm sitting in my house in Minnesota after 31 inches of snow this month. So post that invites others to play, to join our church or our organization in fun activities, to show up to spaces where we can have a meal with one another, that make them laugh, share the most funniest meme or GIF, or if your staff is into those kind of things, the latest dance craze or the latest, social media challenge. These kind of posts invite others to play alongside you. And if you are thinking, oh, Sheeta, okay, I want to be a social media peacemaker, so I want to craft our editorial calendar to have opportunities that encourage peacemaking, that shows others that we are practicing social media shalom, I would encourage you to look for posts that inspire passion, look for posts that gives purpose, and look for posts and create posts that invites others to play. So now I'd like to open up this time for us to ask any questions. I know Shannon's going to read some questions and I'll answer them, but I just want to encourage you to just go in peace, to love and serve online, to really look for the opportunities for you to be a peacemaker in every online instance. And so let me go ahead and open us up. I'm going to cancel the share so that we can have a conversation.
Well, thank you so much, Oshita. You've given us so much to think about. I want to invite people to pose any questions or make any comments in the chat. Let's start in the chat. we have a lot of people on. So let's start with chat, and maybe we can do more dialogue once we get started with that. At this point, we don't have any questions in the chat, so I want to invite that. One of the things I think about, Oshita, is just how helpful it is to gather together and just pause from our routines and think about this together, and have you share with us, some really good things to think about, ground us in the scripture, remind us of our vision of who we are as God's people, as God's peacemakers, as people who are in relationship with a God who loves, a God who is committed to bringing wholeness and shalom to the whole world. And I know for myself, like, you've addressed a lot of things that I think about when I'm on social media. You've addressed some of my own fears and hang-ups, and I just find it really helpful to hear what you have to say. And here's a couple questions. Will we be able to get the slides or notes, and is the PowerPoint presentation available for us?
Yes, I will be happy to pass that on to Shanna, and you guys can use them as you need. I'm also going to be available on the Gathering Place page. So when this posts, I'll be hanging out there. So if you have follow-up questions or something comes up, I can answer you in real time in response to, I am a spirit of the stairs kind of person. Like, I leave a conversation and then I have all the questions and all the things I want to know. So I totally get that if you want to come back.
Yeah, so just to let everyone know, we're recording the webinar, and the recording will be posted on the Gathering Place page, the very same place that you found the description of this webinar and where you registered. We'll change that text from register here to watch the webinar. And I'll also post whatever Oshita shares with us, whether it's a PowerPoint or a document or whatever. I'll put that in that same location for you to find later. And then you can also tell other people that they can come and watch this webinar and find those resources for those who haven't been able to join us this morning. So, Oshita, it looks like you're also reading the chat. Really no reason for me to read them for you. You go right ahead and engage either of these good questions.
Sure, I'll do Maria. Let's see. Okay, so the question is, and you all can see it on the chat, but I'm just going to say it for me, and then I'll respond. So do you have suggestions for mentoring young people in being social media peacemakers, recognizing that so much of social media use is done privately, even as it's seen so publicly? Yes. So one of the things that because I have a 16-year-old, I have a 13-year-old, and I have a 12-year-old. So this is really in my heart right now, is having conversations with my kids around their social media use. Okay. And actually, I'm going to tie this into Lisa. So Lisa's question is, as an elder, we sometimes have issues with youth inappropriate posts and members that have left putting things inappropriate about our pastor or church because of personal issues. So how to handle these things with peace. So first, I'm going to talk about kids and inappropriate posts. Then I'm going to talk about, kind of responding to that church piece. So some very practical things around my kids and posts. If my kids are on any kind of social media, they know I am following them. I am paying for my kids' phone bills, and I am paying for their internet. So I get to see what's going on their phones. So, every so often, I will just say like, I'll show my kids my phone first. So I'll say, look at this cool thing I saw on Instagram. And we'll go through it. I was like, can I see your Instagram? And so they know, like, mom will share with her like how she's working on social media, what's going on social media, but then she's going to ask me. So, and so when I notice that my kids are kind of following somebody that's a little problematic, or maybe they've posted something that's a little problematic, I'll ask them point blank, like, how did you feel when you posted that? Because usually when I ask my kids, how did you feel about that thing you posted? They'll say, well, I felt really good about blah, blah, blah. But then, and then there's always some like horror story, right? So they'll say, well, the reason that happened is because you really posted that, because you posted that and it offended this person and made them feel less than or whatever. And I'll just have a conversation as a peacemaker real time with them to say, you know, next time you see a meme see a meme like that and it makes you feel that same way, the next time maybe don't share that, because it's going to hurt somebody else. I think really reminding your kids that there's a person on the other side of that post is so eye-opening for them. Like when I tell my kids, if you follow somebody at your school and you're friends with them on social media at school, you're going to have to look at that person the next day when you're in class. So there's always a person behind the post. So you get to feel it in real time. Well, that's the same thing for somebody you follow in Seoul, Korea. That is an actual person. And when my kids understand that, and when we have that conversation, they're always a little more hesitant about their activity on social media. Now, the next thing about, you know, people putting inappropriate things in about the pastor, about the church, or a personal issue that they have in public forums, I actually have experienced this 2 or 3 times, and I've seen it. I have not seen it work really well. I've seen the pastor or the leadership team get really defensive online because they feel like they need to shut that thing down in a public space because that person did it in such a public space. Here's what I would do as a practice of peacemaking. If somebody shares something inappropriate, as an admin, you have the right to delete it. And then you can go back in and you can leave a message that says, you know, for those of, because people will see it or people will respond to it. For those of you that saw Sue's message earlier today, we have invited Sue to have a conversation with us in the office. Make sure you do that. Like take it down, invite Sue into a real life space and then say, we have invited Sue to have this conversation, and anybody else who wants to be a part of this conversation is welcome, because we want to talk about this disagreement in real time. Most of the time, when you invite somebody into that space, they won't show up because they really just wanted to use social media as a place to vent. And as a peacemaker, you get to set those boundaries of peace around your social media spaces. So that's what I would say. Another thing that I would do, if you don't already have this in the group description, I would go in and say, in this group, just like set group covenant. In this group, we will be kind to each other. In this group, we will not post political comments. In this group, we will not, it is okay for you to go in and say, this is the standard of how we're going to live. This is our kingdom standard. This is how we're going to be Christ-like here in this space. And if you can't do that, then your post will automatically be deleted and you'll be invited to have a conversation. So maybe do that preempt work first. And then if something else happens, say, well, this is the rules that we've set for this community. So, let's see. The next question is, do you find these tools work the same across different age groups, or would you gear ideals differently for youth versus adult users? I just addressed that. I think the thing that is evergreen, the postures that I shared, you know, not getting your identity from social media, remembering there's a person behind the post, looking to authentically connect instead of correct, using unfollow and unfriend as peacemaking tools and taking breaks. Those can be used across age groups. I really think that break piece is something that if you and I can teach our kids now, that can transform the way that they use social media. It can become a tool for peace and not this thing that they get their sense of identity from, or this weapon against people they disagree with. Because we have seen our teenagers, our youth, use social media to move movements forward, to be a part of change. So they understand, they're not naive to the power of social media. So if you and I can teach them how to take breaks, to step away from it so they don't get their identity from it, but then when they do engage with it, how to do it well, we are creating a whole generation of peacemakers behind us. Let's see. Please repeat info on how to join the podcast. Oh, you can follow the podcast anywhere any podcast app you use. So we're on iTunes, we're on Stitcher, and we're on we're not on Spotify yet. So I would say iTunes or Stitcher or Overcast you can find there. So and then also if you link to my website oshita.com, there's a link to follow the podcast there as well.
And just the name of the podcast is Shalom Sisters. So that's what you'll be searching for when you go onto one of those platforms.
Yeah, and the series is called Dear White Peacemakers, and it's starting next month. Any other questions?
a question that I wasn't quite sure how to type out. I think that there's a trend right now in youth and young adults who use social media to be moving away from conversations and using social media more as statement making. And they're leaving platforms that have aided conversation like Facebook to things like Twitter and Instagram and Snapchat that are more statement driven and less conversational. And often when there is a disagreement, that's when they take a Facebook break or they take a social media break. So we're moving to a point of conflict avoidance, and I'm watching it happen in other kinds of communications like text messaging. My college students that I work with are more likely to not give a response than to give a negative response to a question that I ask them. So it seems like there's just this general trend away from back and forth conversation. So much of what we've talked about or heard from you today has been really helpful, but I think it assumes a two-way conversation is going on. And we're sort of moving into a point where people are less and less interested in having two-way conversations. So I'm curious if you have any wisdom in how to navigate this sort of new field that we're entering into with social media communication.
Yeah, I've noticed that too. So what I would say is that I've noticed this, and I'm noticing this mostly with millennials and, like you said, college students. I am noticing this, and what I'm noticing is that it's tied to just a general lack of social skills. Like they just don't know how to be a friend. They don't know how to have a conversation, just like even in real life. And so when you get to this impersonal space, well, yeah, you just want to put an idea out and then back away because you don't even know how to handle if somebody engages with you online. So then as a faith leader, as somebody, when I notice, like even my 16-year-old, like I talked about him earlier, he can sometimes do that. When I notice that, my goal as a relational person is to go in and say, okay, in real time, so you posted this thing and you backed off. And I'm wondering if you feel a little anxious or scared about, engaging with people. But I know that this means something to you because, see, here's the thing. If somebody posts something online, they're asking to be seen. And as peacemakers, that's our calling, is we are saying we see you in this space. And then our next step is, it might look a little tricky. It might not be on social media. You can say, then let's go have coffee about that thing you posted. And then when you're having a conversation with them, you address that thing they posted. Then you say, well, hey, maybe next time if you post that, like I will be there to watch if anybody engages, and I'll interact with them too. Because we are the ones that get to show others how to be in right shalom-seeking relationships. Okay. Go ahead.
I like what Amy Marie up here says, that Ben's comments make me more appreciative of your consistent invitation to invite people into conversation in real time and face to face. I think that's one thing we as adults can do to model these kinds of conversations with our kids and the youth that we work with. So yeah, I was thinking the same thing, that part of our role here as leaders is to be role models in initiating and having conversations around these things that, are clearly important to people, and engage them in the conversation and in that way model the conversation. It feels, on the one hand, it feels like so small, like just one person at a time. But on the other hand, that is also how Jesus started it all, was one person at a time.
Right. And, I think too, this is why I started with, don't get your sense of identity from likes or people's reactions. Don't get your sense of am I an effective peacemaker by how many, great interactions I have online, because it really is going to look super messy. It's going to look like you stepping back and saying, this is what's going on in social media. But there is a person behind that post. So there's something deeper there. So I'm just going to pull this person out and see them and then send them on their way. And then there's this person, I'm going to pull them out, and it's just going to take more time. You're not just going to be able to write one super awesome post and then the whole world is going to become super awesome peacemakers. You're not going to just fix this problem with one post. And I think that we have kind of been conditioned for that. And as Anabaptists, we really love that practical slow and grow because we see that in Jesus, right? So that's just kind of the posture that we have to change. We have to rethink when we engage with social media. Clayton, I see your question about, do you have ideas for best practices in integrating social media into faith formation more broadly? Are you on? Can you speak up? Can you speak more to that so I can understand kind of your heart behind that question?
Yeah, I guess I'm just thinking along the lines of, like, I'd love to go through these different things you've taught us today with the youth and young adults and even adults, because like we were just saying, modeling is important. But yeah, when we're using social media to talk about events or to encourage discussion in church, are there just some best practices beyond what you've mentioned that might be helpful in creating good conversation, curating that, or using social media in a way that's going to be effective and helpful for the church as a whole, and not just a place where people can dump and run?
Right. This kind of ties into Chad's question about, have you an experience with social media platforms and local faith communities? So I'm going to kind of answer those two together. So here's the thing that I will say, and this is what I've noticed, because my husband is planting a church. We run about 30 to 70 people, and then I'm on staff as an outreach pastor at a mega church at Woodland Hills. We run about 1,000 to 1,500 people on a weekend. So I'm kind of like watching how social media happens in both of these spaces. And then I've seen other churches how they do it. Here's the wrong way to use social media, is to kind of set up, here's the 5 posts we're going to post this week. And every morning at 6 o'clock, this post gets put up, and then we walk away and keep our fingers crossed that people are going to show up at church on Sunday or engage. What the best thing to do is to assign a person, or even better, a group of people, 3 or 4 people, and you say, we're going to post this thing. Can you keep an eye on this post? And if anybody shares a thought, or will you even share your thought and get the conversation going, because we want to show that this is a space for conversation, not just posting an idea and walking away. Can you kind of like help manage this platform? Like, do you like think about the people in your church. Are they always posting a picture of their cat on Instagram? Well, maybe they really like Instagram, so help them use that for the kingdom. So say, can you keep an eye on these posts, engage with people, share your thoughts, help this become a vibrant space. And I think that by asking people to engage in that way, they feel like they're a part of the mission of the church. It's reframing the way your church uses social media. It brings back that relational piece to it. And then you might see more engagement on a Sunday morning because they engage in a safe space from their phone. That's what I would suggest. And I think that is my core question when I'm engaging with social media is, how do I make it personal? How do I make it relational? How do I honor the person behind the post?
One of the things that we're sort of moving in the direction of thinking about how we as faith leaders use social media in our work as faith leaders. And so I wonder if, maybe we can open up a conversation here to anyone who has some experience with that they might want to share, or any further thoughts or questions, insights that you have around that.
And I'm going to mute my mic so that I can hear from you guys if you want to talk.
Just remember to unmute your mic before you speak so we can hear you. Well, one thing I was thinking about was, Oshita, you're going to share with us these PowerPoints and, everything you've shared with us, we'll have access to after the webinar. And I wonder if we might brainstorm some ways that we could actually just use that same material in our own context, with the adults and youth that we are leading. Do you have any thoughts about that? I mean, you're more familiar with kind of the format of what you're going to share with us.
Sure. Yeah, I'm going to send you the PowerPoint. I just had a thought, if you want to take like Monday through Friday and share, each one of these thoughts, like my worth is not defined by social media. What does that mean to you? Engage your conversation. There's a person behind the post. Like if you want to, as a faith leader, kind of just create your own, if you have a graphics design team, you can do that. But Canva is a website that makes it super easy for you to create Instagram posts. When I share this with you, if you want to take those 5 kind of postures and spend a week saying, we as an organization want to be social media shalom seekers. We want to be peacemakers. We learned these 5 things. Watch us next week how we're going to reform the way we think about social media. That can just be a really interesting way of engaging your audience, because what I notice about social media is the posts that do the best are the ones where you're authentic, where you're saying like, I'm on a journey about my love for basket knitting. Who knows anything about basket knitting? Like people love when you share what's going on in your life. They also love when you teach, when you share with them a life truth, like something that's like an aha for them that helps them rethink something that they engage with all the time. So like I did this yesterday on social media. There are things I tell my daughter all the time that I forget to tell myself. And so like I shared on Instagram, here are the things I tell my daughter: drink more water, I'm proud of you. But I don't tell myself these things. I got a lot of responses because people like when you use social media to remind them of who they are, and to invite them to think deeply about something that is so everyday to them. So that can be one way if you want to take the content, and I fully bless you and encourage you to do that if you think that'll be helpful for thinking about the conversation. Another thing is, as you're looking through it, if you want to have, want some encouragement or some thoughts on how to go into your group description and say, in this group we build ... If you'd like some ideas for that, I'm going to give you my email address. You can share with me kind of what you were thinking, and I can help you or share with you what I've written in other spaces. My email address is Oshita, and that's OSHETA @gmail.com. I would love to go deeper, take this off of here and go deeper and add and look about and talk about how this might work in your specific context, because I deeply think like this is the new frontier for peacemaking for us.
Yeah, thank you for that offer to just go ahead and share the principles that you've shared with us on social media. As we do that, I want to encourage us to tag Oshita and tag the Gathering Place as a way to let people see where these ideas came from, to give her credit and to give them the opportunity to dig deeper, to find more material on this topic.
Yeah, Lisa, I want to respond to your question. With 60-second video testimonies be a positive, engaging, relational post for people to comment and relate to? Absolutely. So my husband's church plant, we have this tagline that we are misfits on a mission, and we have an upcoming social media campaign around Easter that says I'm a misfit because, and we're asking people to share with us like, where are the 3 reasons why you're a misfit? Like how you don't feel like you're to the right or left, you're not progressive enough or conservative enough. Like, how do you feel like you just don't fit in to these binary spaces? And we're like, when we pitched that idea out, it was really fun to kind of see who's starting to think about like what they would want to share. So yeah, I think anytime you can personalize social media, then that's great. So you're connecting face and voice to the mission of God. Like that is for sure an awesome way to be a peacemaker on social media.
Wow, I am loving that idea. Where did you say you're going to do that? The Misfits?
Oh, that's my husband's our church plant. It's called Roots Covenant. in the Terrence St. Paul. So it'll be on our Instagram feed, where we'll, every day we'll have like a new misfit that we share, and then also tying it into how Jesus was a misfit. But yeah. But I mean, Lisa, I think that's a great idea too. And teenagers really love doing that. They love being on camera, for obviously. So that might even be a cool way to highlight your youth group. Yeah, everything is moving towards video, I've noticed. And so when you can utilize that for peacemaking, it's great.
Thanks for the idea, Lisa. Any final comments or questions for Oshida? This has been super, really good. Here's one more question.
Oh, the 3 main social media platforms serve the church or this conversation in different ways. So Chad, I'm going to look for your picture, Chad. I'm assuming you're talking about, just give me a thumbs up, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Those are the 3 you're thinking? Okay. Real quick. So Facebook, like Clayton had mentioned earlier, it's become a space for conversation. So people can, post a huge thought, post an idea, and then there's more conversation. So I would say if you are somebody that utilizes Facebook, when you go to Facebook and you're going to be a peacemaker there, you are also prepared for sitting and following a thread, because people will just share all of their thoughts and ideas in that comment space. Instagram has been primarily used, it started out as image sharing. It's primarily for pictures and graphics and images. And so what I've noticed is that, when I post, even if I post a text, it has to be something that is striking, that people will notice and pay attention to. And so I don't look for a lot of engagement there other than emojis or thumbs up or, oh, this is beautiful, or, oh, this was meaningful to me. And so I know that when I go, I want to share a picture that shows as much of the heart of what I'm posting as possible. And so my strategy for peacemaking there is this graphic striking and engages the person to go in. Now, I'm also known for writing kind of long captions. So I will write a caption that's my full thought. So for instance, I posted something about my teenager. I'm having questions about how to love him well as a pastor's kid 2 times over. His dad's a pastor, I'm a pastor. How to love him well and engage him and serve him well on his spiritual journey. And so I posted something, and it was just the words, I am a good mom, or I'm a good mom. But then I had this whole post about that. But then people responded just me too, I struggle with that. Great thought. Anybody that wanted to go deeper will go into your DMs, your direct messages. So as a peacemaker, you're going to post that graphic. People are just going to give 1 or 2 thoughts or an emoji, but check your direct messages, because that's where people mostly go. Twitter, I stay off of, to be totally honest, because for me, it's so quick, fast. It's so fast. It's really hard for me to fully by the time I really fully engage with or want to engage with that person, they're already talking about something else, or they're highlighting something else. And so what I've learned to do is use Instagram as a place for encouragement. So if you know Lin-Manuel Miranda, he had this beautiful series of posts that was good morning, good night. And he would jump on in the morning and share something really encouraging, then jump on at night and share something really encouraging. And that was the extent of that whole, that whole season. I mean, I think throughout the day he would share some things, but you knew that if you went to his page, if you followed him on Twitter, you were going to get a blast of goodness at least twice a day. What if you and I think about Twitter as not a place for conversation, or not a place to build relationship, maybe Facebook and Instagram are better suited for, but Twitter is a place to just blast that forceful goodness all the time. So we're coming in, we're sharing some encouraging things, some thoughtful things, and things that remind people of their Imago Dei, points into Jesus, and we're just saying this is truth about who you are, and most people will receive that and be like, oh, I needed that, and they won't really feel the need to engage with you. So that's kind of how I'm navigating those spaces. And then don't get me started on Snapchat, because that stuff is scary and teenagers use that for weird reasons. So
That was just really helpful. Thank you very much. We are at, let's see, we're at 85 minutes here. We are in our 90-minute webinar. So I want to give anyone an opportunity for one last question or one last comment.
I'm just going to take Ben's route here because I don't have it fully formed. But what you said about Snapchat really struck me, because that's the primary way that all the high schoolers that I work with communicate with one another. And I'm realizing there's this big gap because I actually don't have Snapchat. And but that's the way. So maybe that's a 2.0. I don't know. At some point we need to address that one, and I'm not sure how. So I'm curious to talk more about that later.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I've been so, as a parent, that I've been so struck by is how my authenticity and how my questions with my kids, how they engage with that, really from a place of like, oh wow, okay. So like I said to my son, like, I am scared of Snapchat. I don't know how to use it well, so I'm not going to use it. And I started a whole conversation with him about like all the nuances and how his friends are using it. And after that conversation, I was like, you know what? That's not for me. But just remember, there are people behind it. Like I just went like do my thing with him, but like, I hope you're using it well. That's not for me. And he eventually decided like it's not for him because I gave a compelling enough, reason. But kids love to they love to be listened to, and they really do love to teach you. So I worked for a social media company once, and we had a woman on staff who was like the Snapchat queen, and all of us like old fogies who are like in our 30s were like, what do you do with that? And she just loved like sitting and showing us filters and all the things, and it was really fun to learn from her, and we felt empowered to say, that's not for us, but I knew. So I think that is a 2.0, but inviting kids to like say like, what do you do on Snapchat? And then even saying like, when have you seen it been used really well? Like this is a question I always ask my kids about other things, but like this is really good for social media. Tell me something you saw that was awesome, that worked really well. And my son would say something like, the March for Our Lives or whatever. Tell me a horror story, something that didn't work so well. And then they'll tell me and I'll say, okay, well let's kind of reverse engineer that. How did it get so bad? And just in that is a teaching moment to help our kids be discerning about social media.
Thank you. Those are some good tips to kind of help us to move forward as we help our kids discern their use of Snapchat. Kathy Neufeld-Dunn has a good comment here for us as leaders to be careful using Snapchat, because there's no way to record stuff. So if you're accused of misconduct, there's no way to hold yourself accountable or to share your ethical behavior. So just something to think about. Thanks for your agreement, Tarek. Well, I think we'll wrap it up here. This has been so good. You've given us so much to think about, and you've given us some really good practical tips and strategies, Oshita, which I really appreciate. Just to close up here, I just want to remind people that Oshita has agreed to be present on our Gathering Place Facebook page over the next week. And you can go to that page and tag her and ask her questions there. We've already covered where you'll find this recording at thegatheringplace.us. And I will, doesn't seem like it should be all that necessary, but I am going to quickly type that in chat box. And now it's linked, and you can click on that and head on over there if you want to. You'll find us there. You'll find us at the Gathering Place on as a Facebook page as well. So just find my notes here, make sure I am not forgetting anything. Join us next month on Tuesday, March 26th, What to Expect at MennoCon 19. Hope to see you there. Thank you again, Oshita. It's just been an honor to have you with us and a real pleasure. I really appreciate your taking time with us here today and all that you've shared with us.
It was really fun. Thank you for all your questions, and I'm praying for you and your ministries. And so, yeah, thanks for being a part of this conversation. It's exciting.
Thank you. And blessings to you and your ministry and your blog and podcasts. And I think many of us will be finding you there. Goodbye, everyone. Thank you for joining.